See the screen now, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. So today I'll be talking about the inevitability of financial risk in businesses and how to overcome them with a focus in Saudi Arabia. All right. So in the outlines, I'll start off with a brief introduction followed by a literary review, and then we'll shed lights on an overview of risk in Saudi Arabia and the research methods that was adopted in the research, followed by findings and conclusion. And the introduction slide. I think by the time all the presenters and with your experience, you all may know that business is not without risk. So from a financial point of view, risk can be considered as the possibility of a deviations in the expected future with causes that the desired results to be different from the expected one. So in business, the people who choose to do business must accept the fact that risk are an integral part of their businesses. And people who have, and by this time, people have to realize that the fact that the business has been operating for more than 5 or 10 or even 15 years does not mean that the business has become immune to risk. And when it comes to risk concept, there can be both positive and negative meaning depending on the preferences of the risk consumer. Risk can also be seen as making differences in the yield between the planned, the required, and the expected result. So the yield levels will be subject to the risk appetite. When it comes to investment in developing countries, risk almost inevitable. So corruption, lack of internal control, and mismanagement creates an enabling environment for risk to thrive. So moving to the next slide, the literary review, it shows various types of financial risk that can occur in corporates, such as liquidity risk, counterparty risk, and other market risk, especially sudden changes in exchange rate for multinational companies. All these risks can be triggered by facts like instability of financial market, other changes in economic factors, internal company actions, or legal interventions in the case of government development of new laws and so on. That being said, the business cooperation, especially in a volatile country like Saudi Arabia, are susceptible to all these risks, especially in the face of increasing global business activities. However, non-financial multinationals can take the advantage of financial or operative hedging to shield themselves against this risk. And management of financial risk should be done by the firm and its shareholders, where a lot of studies show that the shareholders' value can be increased through corporate risk management in the face of capital market imperfections such as costly external financing, agency conflicts, taxes, as well as direct and indirect financing. Moving to the next slide, sharing an overview of risk in Saudi Arabia. I think, as most of you may know, that Saudi Arabia is one of the largest economy in the Middle East, with an economy relies almost entirely on oil. GDP growth has gradually decreased since 2015 to the point where the economy entered into a historical recession in 2017. If you can see in the graph, it shows that the economy of Saudi Arabia has declined in the last 5 years, especially as regards to foreign direct investment, where this underscored the need to adopt efficient strategy that will minimize the financial risk, which is a major concern to foreign investors, as well as owners of multinational companies. The Saudi Arabian Monetary Policy Authority, known in Saudi Arabia as SEMA, has introduced a risk management and compliance strategy in its strategy to maintain a culture with a high level of knowledge and awareness on a scientific and technical basis. In order to protect SEMA resources, the Risk and Compliance Department has developed mechanisms and methods for managing potential risk, constantly improving the risk culture and at the same time increasing the level of compliance with international, local, and domestic standards. A review of a case study was done for a mining company in Saudi Arabia named Ma'aden. And Saudi Arabia gives an insight into a corporate risk management in the country. Ma'aden, the company for its business, has adopted a risk management method in accordance with the ISO 31000 standard, which is based on identifying, analyzing, and then assessing the risk, and then how to deal with the risk by contacting consultant and all experienced people. And the review committee, who has been appointed by the board of directors, which takes responsibility for monitoring the internal control system as well as the procedures and rules that govern risk management and access to periodic reporting and monitor the risk management. These monitoring processes through a tactical risk committee and operational risk committee, and this is followed by financial strategies that determine the numbers of risk by which the company must make a decisions, and therefore applies to the financial strategy of derivative financial instruments and insurance industry. Since any risk in the is associated with the financial transaction, it's necessary to identify scenarios that define the risk to eliminate them, like an external audit, which is one of the requirements of the Saudi body for legal accountants, represented by the internal audits, where they does the assessment of practices, monitoring of risk, and reporting to the company management, as well as making suggestions for improvement. Now going to the next slide. The research, a qualitative research method that engages the technical of literature review, was used in this research, which helps in identifying trends in thinking and opinions. And the next slide, where we can see the major findings. It is essential to understand that financial risk management process is not a one-time thing. It should be a continuous process that should not be taken for granted, as financial risk can arise from all sides and at any time. Before starting the financial risk management process, there should be a very clear understanding of the goals and objectives of the organizations, since they will determine the directions of all activities. So, as a finding of the research, 6 steps to be followed in order to achieve a proper risk management result. The first step is to identify and prioritize the financial risk that relates to the business, which can be done through different types of processes like quantitative risk management or risk assessment and control or audit of financial risk. The second step is the determination of the level of risk tolerance in the organizations, where the team can focus on creating value, not that they are still working within acceptable limits in terms of risk. The third step is to formulate a risk management strategy, whereas the business will identify risk mitigation strategies that it will adopt to manage the financial risk it faces. The fourth step is the implementations of a planned strategy that was developed in the previous step. The fifth step, we can measure and refine. Risk reduction strategy that need to be implemented should be closely monitored to track their processes, their progress, and determine whether they are effective or not, and it can be refined continuously. And the last step, which is the sixth step, we can report this result of the processes, where at each stages of the process, communication is very important. Top management should be aware of the entire risk management processes, especially because it is that they who decide, they will be the one who will be deciding on the risk reduction strategy that they will be using on how to implement them in the future. It's also strongly recommended that the owner, members of the organizations should be informed of the company's risk management initiatives, so they can strengthen their confidence in the company. Moving to the conclusion of the research, as we said previously, financial risk will always be present in all businesses and organizations. Management and owners can manage this risk, or even mitigate or minimize the negative consequences of risk for the company. The measure adopted by Ma'aden, which is the company that we have done for our research, and their operations to mitigate risk in Saudi Arabia investment climate was very productive, or was proved to be productive, especially for the use of two standing committees, the Tactical Risk Committee and the Operation Risk Committee, to monitor the risk occurrence and also to fashion out appropriate response to those potential risks. So by this, it brings me to the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Nasser, for that presentation.